Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron Christensen. This is Horror 101 with Dr. AC, celebrating classic horror throughout history with new episodes every Friday night. Released in 1931, Dracula from Universal Studios stands as perhaps the most influential horror film ever made. Directed by Tod Browning with cinematography by Karl Freund, the film was adapted from the wildly successful Broadway stage version of Bram Stoker's 1897 novel. At the center is Bela Lugosi, whose performance as Count Dracula became definitive almost overnight. Lugosi's thick Hungarian accent, hypnotic stare, and aristocratic poise transformed the vampire from a folkloric monster into a seductive, charismatic figure. His portrayal established many of the traits now inseparable from the character: formal dress, slow, deliberate speech, and an uncanny mix of menace and allure. Though Lugosi would struggle, unsuccessfully, to escape the shadow of the role, his Dracula remains one of cinema's most iconic performances. The supporting cast includes Helen Chandler as Mina, David Manners as Jonathan Harker, Dwight Fry as the insect-gobbling Renfield, and Edward Van Sloan as Professor Von Helsing, whose calm rationality helped define the monster hunter archetype that would become a staple of horror storytelling. Dracula's massive commercial success, especially during the depths of the Great Depression, played a pivotal role in launching Universal Pictures' legendary Monsters series, proving horror could be both profitable and prestigious. The studio followed with Frankenstein later the same year, then The Mummy in 1932, The Invisible Man in 1933, and many, many others, indelibly shaping popular culture for generations to come. Dracula didn't just introduce an immortal character. It helped give birth to American horror cinema as we know it. As one of my best fiends, Bobby, likes to say, we're going to have a fang-tastic time. We're chatting about the original 1931 Dracula celebrating its 95th anniversary, and we have an incredible panel to chat about it with me. Let's bring everybody in. And let's say hello to Bobby Zier of Lugosi Theater.
I bid you welcome. Enter freely and of your own will.
Tom Mula.
Hi.
Kate Hansen.
Hello.
Jessica Dwyer of Fangirl and Horror Hound magazine.
Hi, guys.
And rounding out our circle, Michael Weber.
Hi, it's great to be back.
And as promised, we're going to be chatting about Dracula from 1931, as well as Dracula, the Spanish version from 1931, and the sequels, Dracula Daughter from 1936 and Son of Dracula from 1943. And we will be talking spoilers for this 95-year-old movie, so just prepare yourselves, everybody.
Wow, if you don't know how Dracula plays out by this point, I am sorry. You were in the wrong place.
Thanks for coming on the show, everybody, and welcome. Bobby, I know you've been waiting to do this episode since you found out we had an episode to do. So
excited about it.
And I've heard your origin story. You and Michael actually came into Dracula through the back door because we talked about Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. But let's talk about from the front side of things. When did you come across Dracula, the original 1931, for the first time?
Well, Dracula, he was like already my favorite Halloween character because, he's part of the pop culture. You see him, on Halloween cards, and you see him on cereal boxes as Count Chocula, and you see him in Halloween decorations. And when I was 7 years old, I rented the movie from the local video store, the Bela Lugosi version. And during that scene, when he comes down the stairs and says, "I am Dracula," I got so excited. I started jumping up and down saying, "This is the real Dracula. This is the real Dracula." Like, I just knew that this was the real one. And then it was 1 year later when I learned, saw my first ever horror documentary, Monster Mania, and that's when I learned that Bela Lugosi was really from Transylvania, and then it just reinforced that this is the real Dracula. And like when I was 8, my grandpa built me a cardboard coffin, and I would get in there and fold my arms. So this has been my favorite movie for years and years.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Bobby. I'm looking forward to hearing more stories. Tom, you were on our Bride of Frankenstein panel not too long ago. I know you're a classic Universal nut. Tell us how you came to this one for the first time.
I'm probably the oldest one here, so I was pre-videotape. And I had to wait for our local Shock Theater to broadcast it at 10:30 on Thursday nights. I'm sure that's where I saw it the first time.
Do you remember what your reaction was when you saw it? Did you jump up and down and say, this is the real Dracula?
It was religious awe. Yeah, I remember when I was 11, I saw the beautiful Robert Bama paintings for the covers of the Aurora models of Frankenstein and Dracula, and I felt a leap in my heart. So I must have seen the movie probably when I was about 14 or 15.
Kate, how about you?
I had a gateway drug that was Nosferatu, oddly, as a child. In whatever year Are You Afraid of the Dark came out, there was like a Nosferatu that came out of a screen. And I kind of was like, I think that this may be a coping mechanism now that I think about it. I realized it was like, it scared the pants off me. So I was like, all things vampires, let's go. If something makes me uncomfortable, I like to know everything about it. I found Phantom of the Opera first. We had like a VHS box set. There was also Dracula. I just happened to have the resources.
Nice. Jessica.
I saw Dracula the first time when I was 4 on PBS's. Irv Kopey hosted it on WSIL TV, PBS, these late night creature features. And I was 4 years old watching with my sister. And I'm like, who's the pretty man in the cape? You know, and it just happened. Like, it was okay. It was hard and fast falling for the Count. And from the age of 4 on, I was in love with Bela Lugosi. I was in love with the character, in love with Universal monsters, period. He didn't look real. Bela Lugosi and Dracula looked like a vampire, like an actual creature of the night. He did not look real. He did not move like a human. He had this grace about him, and it just caught me, and it never has let go.
And Michael, how about you?
As a native Chicagoan, it was creature features on WGN, of course, and then, of course, Famous Monsters of Filmland. And what really, I think, hooked me was learning about the tragedy of Lugosi's career following the movie is what kept me fascinated with him. The lost potential, the missed opportunities, the studio disrespect, and a career that should have been something else. And like Jessica said, there was something going on in that performance that was unique and special and wholly original.
And he had done the role on stage for several years and still was not Universal's first choice when it came to doing the film. Originally,
second choice.
Yeah, they wanted to do Lon Chaney, but Lon Chaney, of course, went and died on us. So then we had who was the other?
Ian Keith.
Conrad Veidt too, I think.
Conrad Veidt. Yeah.
Yep.
Veidt would have been awesome to see, though. I gotta say, seeing him in The Man Who Laughs and just everything else, and that head of his would have been amazing.
There's this interview with Bela Lugosi, and he's talking about, because he really wanted to play it for the movie, and he was sending letters to Bram Stoker's widow, Florence Stoker, to try to get the asking price down. He was sending letters to Universal. All the newspapers that had seen him do it, they were all like, Universal cast him. And they interviewed him about it. And Bela said, no one wanted me to play Dracula. They were too busy looking at their cousins and their neighbors and their neighbor's dog.
Well, and he ended up playing it for bargain basement price, too. I think David Manners got paid $2,000 a week, and Lugosi got $500. As you were saying, Michael, he was never really respected by the studio, even though Dracula became this, pardon the expression, monster hit for them and basically saved the studio.
He never became a contract player for Universal for a while. So he was freelance after that and had to do White Zombie.
Which is basically Dracula. With zombies.
So all of you signed up like immediately for this panel. What is it you love about Dracula? I mean, we've talked about kind of like how it grabbed you. Do you remember some specific moments that captured your heart, such as it is? Michael, can I go ahead and start off with you?
Well, I think with the Lugosi version of Dracula, certainly the first quarter of the film, while they're still at the castle, is just fantastic. It is there is something about it that you almost feel like you're watching something you shouldn't be watching because you're in the presence of true evil. And whatever is happening with the alchemy of this actor and this performance is something that is almost magical in a weird way. Later on in the film, of course, the scene with the mirror, that when he smashes the mirror from Van Helsing's hand, and of course, Edward Van Sloan, having the two of them done that scene over and over on Broadway together, and just watching those two actors go up against each other, and how palpable and well acted that scene is in a 1930 made movie. Those are the two, you watch them go for broke in that scene. And I look at that and I go, if it's only those two things, Renfield approaching the staircase and Dracula smashing the mirror, this is a movie to be reckoned with.
Well, and we also get Karl Freund, our cinematographer, gets to play a little more in those early parts of the film. Like, we actually see the moving camera. I mean, I think that's kind of the general consensus, is that, it's shot like a stage play. Well, not in the opening castle sequences. It's not. Like, it is truly a motion picture, and you are moving that camera in, you are dollying in, you're panning. It's just a really beautiful cinematic piece. I agree. I mean, once we get to a drawing room, it becomes a drawing room movie, but there's still some pretty impressive shots that Freund pulls out. Tod Browning being our director, we don't see as much from him. I think he was still in a silent film mode, and so he was more comfortable in that way. But Freund, was coming from the German Expressionism, and he loved to move that camera around and did a great job.
The subtlety of the spider web, of him walking through it, that was that giant image of the spider web, and then he's suddenly on the other side, and you don't think about it until you see the whole it's getting all over me. That was brilliant. You hadn't seen something like that really in a movie.
Well, I confess that, watching it on my little 9-inch black and white screen, I didn't pick up on the fact that he had walked through the spider web. It was only until later I went, oh, wait a minute. Wait, that spider web is still there, and Renfield's having to deal with it.
Let's not forget the fact that we find out armadillos are native to Transylvania.
True story. True story.
And possums,
And they live alongside opossums, exactly.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna say, I think that's the Tod Browning touch.
It
was like weird, because he loved the unusual and the bizarre. There's actually before he became a film director, he actually worked in the circus.
Right.
He performed this stunt called the Hypnotic Living Corpse, where he'd be hypnotized, put in a coffin, and buried alive. Now there was this like tube thing for air so he could breathe, but he'd be 6 feet under from Friday through Sunday.
Wow.
So that opening scene when Dracula's coming out of the coffin, to me that's where I feel like the Tod Browning influence comes in. Is that just like that love of the bizarre? And you see, I love that's how you like the little bug comes out of the coffin thing, and you have the opossums and the armadillo. I absolutely love that opening shot of Bela Lugosi as Dracula, when the tracking shot is going to his eyes, and you feel like Dracula is pulling you towards him.
That's great. There's two things that I was going to mention, and that really stand out for me from the original film. One is Dwight Frye. Dwight Frye is the unsung hero of this and Frankenstein. To this day, I'm always just saddened by how young he was when he died. But by God, that man with those eyes and that laugh, Renfield in that is just so tragic and perfectly beautiful, and just trying his best, And the other part of it is there is this sadness and longing for release that Lugosi sneaks in there, that is subtle and beautifully done, especially at the opera, when he's there talking, to be dead, to be truly dead, that must be glorious. You wonder if anybody picked up on that in 1931. He sneaks in these little subtle hints of the melancholy of a vampire.
Well, I agree with everybody. That first 8 minutes, 10 minutes in the castle is magical. And David Scull talks about it in his book, Hollywood Gothic. He says that he thinks that one of the reasons that it's so powerful is that it achieves critical mass with a pile of symbols. You have the ecclesiastical Gothic arches, the decaying, marvelous, wonderful castle set, the mysterious nobleman who seems to have a secret we don't know about, and this wonderful sly performance of Lugosi. an older man wearing pancake makeup, giving a younger man a cocktail. The younger man passes out. What's going on here? I didn't recognize that when I was 14, but looking at it now and thinking, Garrett Fort wrote that scene, based on Bram Stoker. And he also wrote in, we'll get to Dracula's Daughter, that similar powerful scene in Dracula's Daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, wowie, look at that. And then you find out, I did a little research, and you find out this man never was married, and he died single. And you wonder, wonder what's going on there.
I never drank wine, like the cobweb too.
The line you just referenced, I never drink wine, the way Lugosi chooses to deliver it, we know that he drinks something. Yeah. And we hear the sense of omission. We see him course correct in the course of that line. That's a really smart actor making a really smart choice. And once you are familiar with the story, of course, you really delight in the fact that he found that particular line delivery.
And he does it that perfect way. I always feel like Dracula's arrogant. He knows that this pathetic human is never going to catch on. So he gives him it's like Dracula says it, he catches himself, but it kind of amuses himself too,
Yeah, to dance around the idea of it.
Yeah.
Daring him almost to ask.
A dark sense of humor, because he gives that little grin like, wine. It's like, yeah.
It's like kind of like shitty that he's like, it's like an in joke, but like he's like making an in joke with the victim.
Yeah.
Like, you get it, right? And he's like, yeah.
That's how he rolls.
Well, Dracula, like, honestly, he enjoys the hunt. He enjoys finding the victim and lulling him. It's honestly, he's like the spider, like lulling in the Renfield the fly.
He can tell, England's going to be easy pickings. This guy's an idiot.
I never really understood, like, what was his main reason for purchasing the Abbey in addition to where he already lived? Was it just like fresh blood, literally?
Yeah.
I didn't know if he was like, I just want to change and like.
He drained the area pretty much, and he wanted to get.
And the whole town was like, don't go up there. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Because they address it in Dracula's Daughter a little bit. They say why he had left.
Van Helsing talks about how Dracula's gift is that nobody believes in vampires, but in the old country they do, but in the modern world they dismiss it as superstition. So I think that's the other reason that he's going there where the pickings will be easier. There was something I picked up on this time around that I guess I hadn't thought about before, but wolfsbane kind of is the stand-in for what we would come to associate with garlic. It's used in a very similar way where they would say, hey, stash garlic all around the room. In this movie, it's wolfsbane. And I guess I'd forgotten that garlic only came later. Does anybody else pick up on that?
You're talking about the vampire lore.
Right.
And I do wonder how much of this had been established by 1931. One thing I picked up, and we'll talk about it with Dracula's Daughter, is them talking about the various ways to kill a vampire, and that the only way to kill a vampire is a stake through the heart. Well, later on, in terms of what we're talking about, no, you can expose them to the sun. No, you can burn the coffin. So I think to your point, Aaron, these things are in evolution. Same thing with the Wolfman when we did the Wolfman deep dive too, that the lore keeps changing. So I'm wondering, like, where did this all start? Because to Kate's point, Nosferatu, he dies when they open the curtains and the sun hits him.
Right.
I wonder how much of this is Universal trying to link their films. We all know that they're like the first multiverse, if you want to call it that. But you also had Wolfsbane in the Wolfman. You had Wolfsbane in this, but you also had the Tanna-Leaves that they decided to bring into play with the Mummy. It's almost like they wanted to create their own mythos with these. And
creating like iconography. It's like, okay, Wolfsbane, crosses, all of these things are being established for the first time.
The thing with vampires and garlic, that is part of folklore.
Right.
And apparently in Romania, like on the nights where vampires were said to be most active were St. Andrew's Eve and St. George's Eve, and they would apparently rub their cattle down with garlic and stuff and hanging it like on the walls during those nights. And it's garlic in the novel, and then in the English version of the play by Hamilton Dean, it's garlic. And then John L. Balderston, when he rewrote it for Dracula for Broadway, that's when he switched it to wolfsbane.
Do we know why?
I've never been able to find like an actual concrete reason. I have an educated guess. I know he was concerned about the place. No.
I was gonna say, if it's on Broadway, you don't want it to smell like a pizzeria.
Well, actually, it's not that far. My guess is that maybe he thought garlic sounded silly. Because if you had people who didn't know anything about vampires, imagine if you told them something like, "Oh, vampires are repelled by onions."
Right.
Like it would sound really kind of silly, you know. Whereas like wolfsbane, it has that like atmospheric name.
There's an exotic quality to it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Stoker codified a lot of that stuff in Dracula. And he has a lot of powers of Dracula that we don't see until the later movies. We see him in Son of Dracula. We see a lot of that stuff. We only got to see Dracula turn into a wolf with Francis Ford Coppola. But that was one of the ones too. We never, I don't think, seen Dracula climb down a wall upside down.
Well,
Franklin Bella's Dracula, he did both of those.
Yeah.
well, and also I think the Louis Jardin one.
Right.
Yeah.
Uh,
The
yeah.
Bourdain is like the most accurate to the book that is around, apparently.
But we get the reference to him turning into a wolf in this one, or a large dog or something running across the lawn.
I wanted to mention one thing about Lugosi's performance. He came over here. He didn't speak English. He probably learned the part phonetically. So he's singing the role, but it began as a stage performance for him. So he had performed it a couple of hundred times at least on Broadway. So he had learned to generate the kind of energy that a stage actor generates. And I think that's one of the things that makes his performance magical in the film is he's working at a higher energy level than we're used to seeing in camera work. And yet it's so contained and so limited. He doesn't do very much.
Yeah.
You know, he squints his eyes. And because of that, it becomes incredibly focused. Like it vibrates very strongly. It's charismatic. I think it's the first time I was aware of an actor having charisma in a film.
Well, and it also suits the character. In a way, he's trapped in time. So he doesn't move quickly. He doesn't have to because he has all the time in eternity. And his movements are very measured. He doesn't, and he's almost like a corpse in how he's still. He doesn't have to do anything. And he knew he had those eyeballs, so he could work it.
Yeah. Tom's very good point about the stage production with, okay, come on, give me a time machine to go back to 26 and watch Lugosi and Edward Van Sloan on stage.
Yeah.
This. But I do wonder what were the differences of the qualities of the stage production. For any of us who've seen Lugosi in makeup for the stage production, it's quite exaggerated with the black bags under his eyes and his sort of physicality. But can you imagine being in a play, for those of us who are actors or in the theater, and you're on stage acting with an actor who doesn't speak the language that you're speaking? He literally is just saying words he learned phonetically, and is giving a performance that is completely divorced from the language of the other 8 actors in the play. So there is naturally this otherworldliness that he's bringing. Now, when you think of anybody who's seen how they presented the Langella Dracula of the same script, but with the whole Charles Adams, kind of a vibe, going on, and then the film version, which was so different, I think about that and go, how different, what were the different qualities of the play, which from everything I've read, and of course a lot of it is spoken about, Tom had mentioned in Hollywood Gothic, that it was more of a drawing room murder mystery than a horror film, because we never see those castle scenes. We never get the armadillos and the 3 wives and him bending over Renfield to the blackout, So it was almost like a drawing room murder mystery than it was what we love about this film. But how amazing it must have been.
Well, and also, I mean, what you're talking about, yeah, that performance that comes into the drawing room quality, the drawing room section of the picture, the opening sequence that feels so much more like a movie, that is what's kind of amazing, in that we have those incredible glass painting special effects shots that gives us this grandness, this scope. And then it kind of like slowly pulls us into then the castle. And then we have that incredible ship sequence, which is stolen from another movie I found out. And then we end up in London, and then things quiet down a little bit. But those opening scenes, watching the little carriage move along the road and then this enormous castle drawn on those glass paintings, it's just incredible, and it feels cinematic. So I feel like anybody who had seen the play suddenly felt like, okay, we're watching something that is the film version of this play. Right. So by the time they got to the London scenes, that would have been more familiar to them. They would have been totally happy with it because they got all of their movie stuff right off the bat.
I got to see John Carradine do the play, and it works. That play gallops along. It starts in the middle. She's already been bit a couple of times. Dracula is a very sinister presence. There are a couple of magical effects of him appearing as an image someplace like behind a scrim. I think in the original Broadway production, he had a disappearance.
Yeah, I can explain that one. So the way that worked in that scene, it was near the end. Dracula was trying to escape. The sun was going to come up soon. And Dr. Stewart grabbed one end of the cape, and Jonathan Harker grabbed the other to try to capture him. And in this scene, Bela Lugosi had his back towards the audience. And this famous magician built a special cape just for this scene. It was extra long, so it covered his feet. The collar was extra high, and it had this like hood thing. And Bela would pull the hood thing, and the cape was reinforced. Bela would pull the hood and slip out of the cape and go through a trap door. When Jonathan Harker and Dr. Stewart were grabbing the cape, and then when Bela got through the trap door, they let go, and then Dracula was gone.
That's awesome. Raul Julia played Dracula in on that Broadway play. And then you had Jeremy Brett, who played Sherlock. Funnily enough, Frank Langella came back and played Sherlock Holmes in a play on Broadway too. The stage play is amazing. Just a little anecdote from my life. I had a book that had a little picture about that big of Frank Langella and the Dracula bed from that Broadway production, where it had I called it the bat bed. It had the bat on the end and everything, and the wrought iron. My dad made me that bed.
Wow.
He literally went and we called it the night bed, not the day bed, because the back end was one giant wrought iron bat, and then the ends were two, based off of that design from a little picture about that big from Dracula. So I had the Dracula bed.
Edward Gorey designed that entire every bit of the costumes set.
It was amazing.
All little bats everywhere. Yeah,
it's great.
I saw it here in Chicago with Jeremy Brett with
oh god, I give like a long
well, and the other great effect in that is the staking him through the heart in the coffin that had this escape hatch in the bottom of it, so they were able to ram it right through him, and it looked like he was actually getting staked. It was really cool.
I'm glad you mentioned the staking, because having read reference books leading up to seeing this, I probably had read about it before I saw it. They make a big deal about how he's ignominiously, disposed of off camera. But watching it this time, I'm watching Van Helsing place the stake. I'm watching him hunt around and find this thing to hammer it in. The off-screen noises are pretty gruesome.
Well, his groan.
Yeah, exactly. And I know that like some of those were cut from video releases, and so we didn't hear the groaning happen. So I can see how if you see it in that regard, that yes, it feels like he just kind of like gets shuffled off stage. But watching the setup and watching and hearing the moaning, that's enough for me. I'm sorry, that works.
I'm convinced he's dead.
Part of what I like about it is that there is that it's like ambiguous, because if you don't see it, it doesn't feel completely final.
Mm-hmm.
But Dracula is such a powerful character, especially the way Bela Lugosi plays it. It's like he dies because of the story. It tells him he has to die at the end, but not because the character really would. You never really question when he comes back for Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, because it feels like they kill him in the story, but Dracula's not really dead.
It probably leads us into our next film, but being 1931, this is pre-code.
Right.
So the idea of the amount of self-censoring, I mean, they didn't show us staking him. They didn't show him getting out of the coffin. The camera pans away and then pans back to save us the shock and the horror of him getting out of a box. I mean, let alone a few other things that were cut. It is interesting to me that they just self-censored for the English and American audiences, whereas the next group had no problem, showing us a lot more.
Well, and are you alluding to the Spanish version?
Sure. Yes. Yeah. I mean, obviously, there's just so many. That's the points that people automatically pick up on, is how much they showed in that version versus this. But it's interesting that it wasn't about the Hays Code. They just were intentionally self-censoring themselves.
Yeah, exactly. You wanted to be a little more decent, whereas you could be a little more flamboyant with the Spanish version. And the idea that they shot Spanish versions for not just this movie, but several of Universal's films. They would shoot it with another cast to sell to the Latin American market. I just find that fascinating, that you're going to go and make another movie so you can sell it to a different market.
What's really amazing is, if you've ever seen, these are films that could be replaced with other actors, but star vehicles like Laurel and Hardy's movies or Buster Keaton, where they were learning Spanish or German phonetically, and you'd hear, and there would be the actual Laurel and Hardy speaking to each other in Spanish. They made a few of them as well, and Buster Keaton doing it as well. Yeah. So it was harder to replace. You couldn't do it with a star.
Yeah, big stars, exactly.
Yeah. In regard to getting out of the coffin's on the ground. We see the wonderful spider hands opening the coffin, and then we look away. My opinion is there's no cool way to get out of a coffin that's on.
That's what I was going with, especially in a cape. They did it in Dark Shadows too. They cut away. You never see him get out.
It's just not elegant. Yeah.
It's like clamber over. And
he's a middle-aged man. Yeah.
Part of why, one of the things I absolutely love about Bela Lugosi in this movie, as you mentioned earlier, is how graceful he is and how he moves at a slower pace. The scenes when he bites Lucy and bites Mina, I find so eerie. It's not done with, he doesn't, you don't miss him because you never really see his teeth, but he has no fangs. There's nothing artificial about it. It's just this slow way he moves in, and it almost feels like an evil spirit moving in. Kind of, he's taking the woman's blood, but also kind of taking her soul too.
There's a lot of that in that movie. The three vampire brides are very ethereal. They're very spooky, the way they kind of float. It's very, you buy that they're spirits.
If you want to have an excuse for why Dracula is still alive and Abbott and Costello, is you never see anything happen to the brides.
That makes me feel better about Lon Chaney coming back.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, of course he looks different because he's a different Count Dracula.
He had a daughter and a son to have. There were still children to be born.
We did talk a little bit about the Spanish version. I'm curious what people's thoughts are about it. In watching them kind of back to back, the Universal 31 with Lugosi is only 75 minutes. And the Spanish version is 103. So it feels certainly grander, but there's a lot more to it. But I can't say that it feels that much slower. I feel like it's just a more kind of fleshed out version of it. But what are people's thoughts about the Spanish version?
It was a little jarring to see him because he's a little bit more emotional. His eyes go wider and it seems like he's more, I don't want to say manic, but just moving around. I loved the look of it. I loved how the women are far more sexier, which is interesting. And when you compare it to how sedate the British version is, in that way, that's interesting to me. I also thought the Renfield in it was great. I thought he did a fantastic job. Yay, Renfield. I really loved it. And it was so interesting to me. I didn't even know it existed until I think when they released it on VHS, I was just so surprised and delighted that we had another version that was in that same vein, no pun intended, and also had that fairy tale look that Universal's monsters films had, and it captured it perfectly, but it upped it, and I thought that was cool.
Yeah, Kate texted me earlier in the week saying, "Who knew that the Spanish Renfield was going to give me nightmares?" That's Pablo Rubio. What I like about his performance, it's so big and broad.
Yeah.
And it is not the same thing that Dwight Fry is doing. Dwight Fry is doing something that's very special and unique, whereas Pablo Rubio is doing just kind of like a broader kind of crazy.
I actually had not watched it until this week. Yeah, that Dracula is like really not hot. Bela is super hot. That Dracula is like, he feels like the other chiropractor like vibe. Is he a chiropractor? He could be. I don't know. He was kind of goofy, but it didn't matter because I agree the women were good. I didn't catch their sexy vibes. I heard a lot of people talking about them being
They
sexy.
definitely had the décolletage down further.
Mm-hmm.
I know, but she makes a point in that introduction where she's like, I didn't know it was sexy. They just handed me a costume and I put it on. And I'm like, yeah, I think I would put it on too, and I wouldn't. And then it's like, oh, that lady wore like a turtleneck, pretty much. Like that's not fair. So I think the comparisons are fun. It feels unreal. It feels like David Lynch was like, let's make a Dracula.
I think of how reserved and British all of the victims are in the Lugosi.
Yeah, we barely mentioned David Manners and Helen Chandler.
Absolutely. and they're kind of bloodless. And the Spanish ones are juicy, man. And when Lupita Tovar is starting to wake up as a vampiress, she's having a good time.
Oh, yeah.
That's a pleasure to watch.
Bobby, what are your thoughts about this one?
Well, first of all, I want to agree the Renfield in this is incredible. I love Dwight Fry. Dwight Fry's the way he balances, insanity, sanity, sympathy, being a vampire, sometimes like having vampire urges himself. Whereas this one is just like it's like pure crazy, and there's something he kind of jumps around on the set where he seems like a wild animal. It's the main character, but I believe her name is Eva.
Yeah.
And she does an amazing job. My issue though is with Carlos Vilas as Dracula. He has kind of his own charm where he's like kind of likable. He has such an impossible task to match with Bela Lugosi. And I think that's where I have a hard time because, as we said, Bela Lugosi was so focused and so concentrated. Carlos Vilas, he isn't, and they don't even do those close-ups of Bela Lugosi's eyes that you see throughout the 1931 movie. They don't do that in the Spanish one with Carlos Vilas. They do a couple of close-ups, but they're not as eerie and it's like cool the way he comes out of the coffin with all the smoke, but some of his facial expressions, they go so overboard. I feel like the Spanish one is like a better telling of the story, but it's not as scary.
I wonder how Carlos Villarreal played for his audience, for the Latin American audience, because there is something that is grander about him, more expressive. And I wonder if that played better for that crowd.
I think it probably did, because if you look at the vampire series of films that come out of Mexico, all of those vampires tend to be very broad, very theatrical, very flamboyant in how they move, how they talk, how they look. It's like a given, and it's something that's embraced by Spanish audiences because they have these films that are the vampires and these women, they run around at night and they're getting chased, and it's all very broad is what I'm saying. But one thing I wanted to bring up that I forgot to mention was Martin and the nurse. And you have these side characters that are so fantastic. And
I also would like to note, I think that the Spanish Renfield's death is significantly scarier. Just this week, sat on my couch and I literally yelled, "Oh shit!" I was alone in my house, and I was like, "Oh shit!" He just fell off the stairs. I was like, man, that would really be bad if you just fell off the stairs. I would much rather fall down the stairs, but just off.
Jessica, the scene you mentioned with Renfield crawling toward the nurse, I mean, we get to see how that plays out in the Spanish version. And I think it's a really interesting choice on their part to cut it short, where he's just crawling toward her. And we think he's moving toward to bite her, but instead he sees a fly, above her, and he grabs the fly, but they cut that short for the Lugosi version, but we see it play out for the Spanish version. That's super cool. Michael, what are your thoughts about the Spanish Dracula?
Well, the point that you're making right now reminds me of our conversation about Frankenstein, when you cut him throwing the girl into the water and just cut it at him reaching for her. The implication is so much more terrifying what he did to that child. Yeah. So it's such a lesson in film editing and what you show and what you don't show. As far as this version, I mean, the performance of Dracula, but also the actor Eduardo Arzomena, I believe is his name, who played Van Helsing. So subpar for both of them. And I'm like, if you have Dracula and your Van Helsing are not really that good, it leaves you with what, I wish I could, you could take some of the elements and combine both films together, maybe. Sure. But I think of even, the first shock of that movie is the camera dolly that goes up the stairs.
Yes.
And I've watched that. And of course, you immediately think, oh my God, they're moving the camera. And it's because they studied the dailies from the other film and went, oh, we can do that better this way or that way. And that's, no harm, no foul. They were doing what they thought was better. And in a lot of ways it was. But then I go back and I'm like, I don't know if I actually like that self-conscious camera move as much as just letting Lugosi be Lugosi.
Yeah.
And go, you're in the presence of evil. I don't need a fancy camera trick to, come up to this guy who's standing there. So I don't know. I think I'll take Lugosi and company over this one, even though this one is a little bit flashier.
I agree with that opening shot of him. I almost feel if Bela Lugosi was in that shot where like the camera went up the stairs, I almost feel like that would be like almost like too overwhelming. Because Bela Lugosi is such a presence. Whereas I like that he's almost like the armadillos and the bugs and the possum, where he just kind of like slowly walks in the frame and you're just seeing the children of the night in action.
It's also worth mentioning that the Spanish version, they only got a $66,000 budget, whereas the Lugosi one got a $341,000 budget. Now, granted, that was probably to build all the sets, and then they're reusing the sets. So I'm sure that didn't go on their bottom line, but still, it was clear that this was supposed to be the main picture. And this wasn't as lavish a production as they originally had envisioned. I think they were looking at a more faithful adaptation of the Stoker novel and realized that they needed to dial it back a little bit. Because again, this is after the Great Depression is in full swing. Universal is not doing so well. But then this movie opens on Valentine's Day, the strangest love story ever told. And there are lines around the block. And it is a huge sensation. And I always think about movies during the Great Depression, and the people were like, well, I don't have any money for food, but I'm going to see a movie tonight.
When it first came out, the scene where Dracula and Van Helsing had that confrontation, with the part where Van Helsing threw up the cross, the audience burst into applause. It was like that exciting of a moment when it first came out.
I think if you look at it like the fact that it's going on during the Great Depression, people probably looked at the bloodsucker vampire as the world at that time, and seeing Van Helsing stand up to the fact that you have this thing draining you of your life, of your money, of your livelihood, your family, all of it, holding up a cross and going, no. And they're looking at that like, yeah, that's why I think it hit. Plus he was hot.
Aaron, I think to your earlier point about the unexpected smash hit that this began as, it needs to be connected with the fact that Carl Laemmle was completely against making this.
Yeah.
And did not want, he thought it was so below them, even in light of Phantom of the Opera and how big that had been, a little more than 5 years before. But it was Junior Laemmle pushing this along, going, Dad, this is where we can get people, young people like horror, young people like the thrills, and the whole Universal lore is ahead of them. This was the one. This was the OG right here, the first sound film, that started it all. It's amazing to think that a lot of the cuts and a lot of those budget things is the old man not believing that this was going to be an embarrassment, that this was going to be the last straw, and it was the thing that launched an entire American phenomenon called Universal horror movies. I mean, wow.
Yes, suck it, Dad.
Yeah.
Well, and also it was the proof, and it's still going strong and showing that horror is the genre that makes money. You've got it where you've got companies like New Line Cinema, who literally that became their bread and butter. Now you've got Blumhouse, and even the crappy ones make money.
When you're talking about Carl Lumley Sr., in the opening credits, president is misspelled, so he got it in the end, I guess.
With the world as it is right now, seeing a show and being taken out of the world was a tremendous relief. And I was grateful for it. I know that the rest of the audience felt the same way. So I'm sure that that's part of the appeal of fantasy during the Depression.
That makes absolute sense. I was saying backstage that I love these conversations because they allow me to be distracted from the world as it is right now. I'll take on-screen horror anytime over real-life horror.
Talking about Dwight Frye, in the beginning scene before he loses his mind, he does this little nervous laugh when Dracula says, "The spider springs webly on the very fly. The blood is life, Mr. Renfield." And he goes, yes. And what a great what a great foreshadowing for the laugh he does later, when he later does the like, it kind of foreshadows, like, that's what he does when he's nervous. And then I do want to give a shout out to Edward Van Sloan as Professor Van Helsing.
Yes.
He brings such an earnestness and a really professor quality to the role that everything he says sounds so believable. And I can imagine for audiences at the time who really didn't know much about vampires, everything he said, it just carries so much weight.
That's so good that they made him redo it in The Mummy.
Yeah.
And Edward Van Sloan is kind of our linking between this film and the 1936 sequel. And I love that it picks up right where Dracula left off.
On the set of Frankenstein.
Yep.
Now, Dracula's daughter is an interesting one. She does claim to be Dracula's daughter. Well, does that mean that she is his spiritual daughter, or is she his literal daughter?
I always went with it that she was his daughter, and was cursed just like he was. My question is, who's the mom?
Right?
I think that she either was his actual born child, or he took her as a, he was probably lonely and wanted offspring of some sort,
right,
and created her.
Right. And that's what I wondered, because she is eager to have this curse lifted. She is not reveling in vampire life the way he is.
I rewatched it today, and I was so glad I did, because I forgot how good it is.
Yeah.
And it isn't regarded as being good, but I love the way that it gets the points. It stays true to the previous film. I mean, obviously it does jump out at me, as I mentioned earlier, that, it starts on the set of Frankenstein. So obviously they're saving a little money up front, but they do go back to the castle, and that there's a later scene, and they must have saved it in mothballs and re-erected it. I mean, how cool was that? Obviously, there is the scene that everybody refers to in this movie, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Let's just talk about it right now.
Sure. Well, I mean, and just so interesting that you would go just in 31 or 30, they were afraid to show you, him getting out of the coffin. And in this scene, they have a very blatant post-censor code, era. And there's a very clear lesbian scene going on in the film, and that she is in pursuit of numerous women in this American-made horror film. And
also it's pretty obvious that the girl is also a prostitute. That was a huge thing. Like,
that man Gray, it's not just that one scene. She has a substantially developed character, and the scene that struck me when they're taking her out after she's been attacked, the look on her face when they're pulling her out of the ambulance, I'm like, whoa, that's she's really going there. And you want to dig in. And she had quite an interesting career. Again, sort of like going back to another drawing room murder mystery. and some strange casting with Hedda Hopper and things like that. Otto Kruger, who kind of flirted around these movies. I thought it was interesting. I just found out about Otto Kruger. He was the original Waldo Lydecker in Laura in the Broadway play. I think it's a terrific movie. I really enjoyed it. I thought it
was interesting that they worked this whole Girl Friday thing into it too.
Mm-hmm.
Like it definitely had that vibe of like the Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn with the doctor and his assistant. And
I love Marguerite Churchill.
She was great.
So good.
Oh my God, I love it when she calls them and it's, "This is the zoo speaking. Our elephant are saying, pink men, come right away."
And he's just like, what in the hell, man?
I was actually thinking that, like, as I was watching, like, Dracula, the Bela Lugosi, it feels very early 30s, almost kind of late 20s, especially with like the hairstyle and stuff. Whereas this feels like very like smack dab in the middle of the 30s. It has that screwball comedy vibe with those two characters.
But it goes dark, and that's what's so fantastic about it. They hint heavily that she's got this lesbian tendency, but you've got this interesting parallel with the doctor where she's seeing him not as this romantic, really, but salvation. Janet, his Girl Friday, no, that's not what she's after, gal. She's just wanting him to save her. You'd be more of her type. It's a different take, and I really like that.
Like Michael, watched it again today, and I was knocked out with what a good movie it is. And Gloria Holden is terrific. The sadness, the regality that she plays, and she, at one point she says, "I am Dracula's daughter." Mm-hmm. She just spells that out. She has real presence, even though you can tell, you hear from stories that she didn't really want to do it. And yet this is the movie that we remember her for. And again, I credit Garrett Fort as the screenwriter, because he wrote this whole thing. He isn't basing this one on an existing play like he did with both Dracula and Frankenstein. So this is entirely his. And the two best scenes are the scene with the seduction of the young lady, and also where Zandor is look, what do you see in my eyes? I see death. That scene is such a great scene. And those are, Garrett Fort wrote both of those. You just admire him as a writer. And these are the things we remember him for: Frankenstein, Dracula, and this one. I would like to have seen him write a lot more movies.
You mentioned the Sandor character. I mean, that is clearly the Bela Lugosi stand-in. Yeah. It's like, in case anybody was missing Bela Lugosi, we got to try and get somebody who looks like Bela Lugosi.
Very white dude with black hair. Yeah.
Well, to me, I kept thinking, who the hell is this guy? What's his? And I'm like, you know what? He's not Bela Lugosi. He's her Renfield.
No, absolutely. Yep. I'm just thinking like he looks like Lugosi. Yeah. But they flipped it around.
And the tragedy being that Lugosi was supposed to be in the film, did publicity for it. And I wonder, what were those scenes supposed to be with Lugosi?
They went through so many different versions of the script. This last version of the script is, I guess, very, very different than what they had for earlier versions that got rejected. There were some printed out versions of earlier versions, and they're kind of nonsense. It's like they couldn't come up with a decent story, but this one did.
I have read one of the lost scripts for the Dracula's Daughter that included Bela Lugosi in it. The whole subject with Dracula's Daughter was different, but in the opening, it was like the first act was like a prologue showing Dracula as a human being. It was sort of like Mask of the Red Death, kind of, where he was throwing this party and giving the different people, the different girls from the village. And one of them, whose wife was trapped by Dracula, he summoned the wizard Talifer to come to the castle. And then Talifer goes to the castle and he says, "You're acting like a pig," and he turns that guy into a pig. "And you're acting like a rat," and he turns that guy into a rat. And then he goes to Dracula and turns him into a vampire. And that was like going to be Bela Lugosi's part in it.
Interesting.
But honestly, even though he's not in it, I feel like you still feel his presence.
Yeah.
Gloria Holden, when you asked, is that supposed to be his daughter? I feel absolutely, because she reminds me of him. The eyes. And I love they do that variation of the spotlight, where instead it's like with the burqa, where you see like the whites and the deep eyes. And that, like, as you mentioned, she's very regal. She's got that faraway look in her eyes. She really does. She really seems like his daughter. Like you could buy that as Bela Lugosi's daughter. And she even says her own version of when they offer her wine at the party, and she's like, "Oh no, I never drink wine." Yeah. So she even gets to do the famous line, you know. But I love how they develop her character in such a different direction. Like they go into the sexual aspect of her character more. And Anne Rice has even said this was a huge influence on her. And then they go into the fact that she doesn't want to be a vampire, and then the Renfield character Sandor is doing the opposite of Renfield. He's right. encouraging her to become to stay a vampire. So I think it's for not having Bela Lugosi in it, they just take what they have and just run with it into this incredible story. And I love too how they, as you mentioned, how they bring it back to Transylvania. Because that's sort of it makes the two feel like, because in the novel it starts in Transylvania and ends in Transylvania, and that makes Dracula's daughter even more of a companion piece with Dracula, because they start Transylvania and Transylvania.
They replaced Lugosi with such an obvious rubber dummy in the coffin at the very top. But I forgot about this. When they go back to Transylvania, there's a very quick cut of a tapestry on the wall that is Lugosi as Dracula. And it reminded me of a moment in Son of Frankenstein where they cut to the painting and it's Colin Clive.
Yeah.
Or in Abbott and Costello Meet the Invisible Man and it's Bob Raines. Those little Easter eggs are so delicious. They're so wonderful when they get it right.
I watched it not like a month ago, even before I knew I was doing this. Wasn't she going to try and kill herself? Wasn't that what she was doing on the bridge when they find the girl that she ends up feeding off of? She was going to off herself?
The girl was, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So it's kind of like he was death watching her. That's what I kind of took from that scene. I'm like, did I imagine that or dream that? No, it really did happen. But like him stalking her and in that shadowy corner, he's watching her like death. And it turns out he is.
It's so funny you should say that, Jessica, because there's a wonderful radio show that Lugosi did called The Doctor Prescribes Death. And it's the same plot of him finding a young woman on a bridge and then trying to get her and dealing with her suicidality. God, I never even thought of that until you pointed out that moment. Oh, it's great. Lugosi on the radio, just his voice is.
Oh my God. It's like Vincent Price. I just, just bring it.
Well, and our director, Lambert Hillyer, he actually did work with Lugosi the same year doing Invisible Ray with Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi. Because I was looking, I'm like, why do I know Lambert Hillyer? And it's because he directed, one of the 8 times that Lugosi and Karloff worked together. I mean, I think he does a nice job handling the horror, considering that was not really his stock and trade. He mostly did Westerns and things like that.
Otto Kruger is a really interesting character in this. The whole psychology component of it, that he's going to try to cure her with psychology. But then you get to the whole thing of her wanting to die or lose her vampirism, but then once they get back to Transylvania and she wants to make him now her husband, her vampire husband. But there's a line that popped out of me that I was like, well, wait a minute. He says, Goth, Dr. Goth, he says, I don't believe in your spells or your magic. And yet all along, he's been the one who's been, accepting that, oh no, Van Helsing's right. Von Helsing.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
Is right. So it was like, well, wait a minute. That was just like one bit of dramaturgy. Like, I'm like, wait, the whole thing is that he's learning to believe. So why is he saying, I don't believe your spells or your magic? I'm like,
I came away really respecting Otto Kruger in this film because in the hands of a lesser actor, he could have really sucked. And he didn't. He was charming. He had some humor. He had some irony. He had an internal life, and he handled a cigarette better than anybody else.
Well, and I really like that he wasn't doing like the MGM version of the light comedy. Like his character feels genuinely grounded. Yeah. And yes, he has a playful interaction with Janet, but it's not being played for laughs. It just feels like that's their natural chemistry, the two of them.
But what was great about it to me, I think, was the fact that he was the modern sensibility. He's the modern guy. You have this this creature from the past who's got all of this, like you said, the magic and the spells and all of that, and you have that coming together like butting heads, and it was different because you hadn't really had that. Van Helsing had always been, or Von Helsing, however you want, but he was always felt more not medieval, but like more in the past in that realm. And here you have a character who is a modern psychologist, very modern, with a female assistant who's also very modern, coming to blows with this mythology.
You're bringing up a point that we've talked about it with a lot of these older Universals. That is, it always, I find it so interesting, is asking the question, what year is it?
Yes.
Because, in the Wolfman, they're driving in cars, and then they're in horse carriages with gypsies. And, and this one definitely felt like it was supposed to be 1936. It was a modern feel. And certainly the next one, definitely. But remember, Aaron, we were talking about that with the Mummy films as well, of going, which, some of these feel like are in the 20s, and then some of them are like, 1940s.
Around their cars. And
this one definitely feels, not only is it in 1936, but it's still definitely in the early canon of Universal that goes up to Son of Frankenstein.
Yep.
And then everything after that is, the 1940s World War II vibe.
Yeah.
Right. Because even Dracula's daughter, she gets back to Transylvania through airplane.
I think also too they decided we're going to go cheaper on these movies, so we're just going to set it in modern times and be done with it. That's just, we don't have the money for a castle set anymore.
I want to point out that this was the last one of the ones that was produced under the Laemmles. That they lost the studio just before this one was released. That James Whale had gone way over budget on Showboat. And they borrowed, $1 million, I think, and the loan got called, and so they lost the studio. And this is certainly the last horror movie that was produced under the Laemmles. And then after that, it was I don't know who was running the studio after that, but Son of Frankenstein was made under those guys.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, speaking of sons, let's jet ahead to 1943. With Son of Dracula, starring Lon Chaney, who is now Universal's go-to monster guy, having had success with Wolfman in 1941. What are people's thoughts about this one? I really like it.
I have lots of thoughts. I love this movie. I wrote an essay about Son of Dracula because of Kat, who bested all the guys in this movie, including Dracula, used him like a dog. And no one realized it. And that femme fatale that she had a goal and she made it happen. And then her stupid ass fiance screwed it all up and was an idiot. This movie focuses on a character that she had her goals. She met Dracula. She wanted to use Dracula. She wanted the plantation. She wanted her guy. She wanted it forever. She figured out a way to do it off her own father and ends up using Dracula exactly how she wanted to, bests him, gets her fiance to kill Dracula because I don't need him anymore. I've got it. I'll make you immortal. It's good. She won until her dumbass fiance kills her.
I agree. And it is one of those, as they say many times throughout this movie, that she's a little morbid. She's a little
Kat was the first goth girl, okay? She was our first goth and fell in love with Dracula, but she's like, I like this guy better. But I can use you.
Yeah, I don't think she really fell in love with him. She just recognized that he had the power. Yeah. And she went, you know what? If I can get you to come here, we can take care of this.
And she already was baptized in that magic from being around the plantation witch. Yep. So it's like she knew all of this.
How I mentioned Dracula's daughter feels very 30s. This feels so 40s because it's kind of like a film noir. She's the femme fatale. She tricks Dracula and fools him into doing it. I know Bela Lugosi wanted to do this movie. I cannot see him with this script because I could see Lon Chaney Jr. getting fooled by her. You know, such a cool like 1940s like twist. That it's the femme fatale. She is the one planning this all all along. She's got all of them outsmarted. I love that.
I wonder what was compelling Universal at this time to set Son of Dracula and The Mummy's Curse in Louisiana.
Right.
It's anything. I mean, they were made right probably at the same time, but the idea that of going up, where should we? Louisiana, New Orleans, perfect.
They already had the sets built. They didn't have to build the sets.
Let's
Clearly
do
what
it.
it was.
I was thinking about that because the other I didn't go into it, but like because we are getting to into the World War II era. I wonder if it was like trying to make the movies seem more American. Because Dracula, even the way he talks about coming to America, they mention him, he's going to drain it dry like his homeland. They make Dracula seem almost like a Hitler level invasion, like, and so I wonder if maybe they're setting it in America as a way of making the stories seem more American and less European.
Also, this is the first flick that Alucard is used as a nom de plume, and boy, do they ram that home! Like,
damn.
Well, exactly. It's like guys, like within the first like 30 seconds, you're like D-A. I'm like, really? Like,
and then they come back to that.
You bother.
Nilbog.
And they repeated 3 times. Yeah.
Now they do Dracula the series with Geordie Johnson. God bless you, Canada. Thank you. They had him named Alexander Lucard, so you had the A.
There you go. You at least have to work a little bit.
A little different.
I mean, we're talking about the Americanization of this is the presence of Frank Craven, right from the very get-go, who was the original stage manager in Our Town on Broadway, and bringing all of that. Welcome to our town.
Yankee sobriety, yeah.
Absolutely. And yet, how quickly these wily Europeans, coming over in the middle of World War II and gonna take over our town. Well, Pepperidge Farm knows that element of the World War II European element, again with Curse of the Mummy, the Mummy's Curse of America fighting the old world, type of thing. That was very much, I think, part of what was subliminally going on here. We didn't want to see those the gypsies gamboling on the green and
and yet you have the least European Dracula ever in Lon Chaney,
Really?
And this one begs the question, is he the son or isn't he? Right there in the credits, they say he is Count Dracula.
Right. Kate, did you get to see this one?
I actually did. It was a long time ago, though. I remember that irritated me.
That he was Count Dracula, but he wasn't Count Dracula?
Correct. It felt like kind of a parody. Like it feels, there's something about it vibe-wise that is like en route to Ed Wood, but not quite. Like empty weirdness. I can like feel the set. But that's all I got.
I dig this movie. I dig it. It's cheap. It's obvious they didn't have enough money. Lon Chaney is terrible in it, but you see him working really, really hard and doing the best he can. But what I love about it is what Bobby pointed out, and it's a film noir, and that's what the director Robert
Siodmak.
But that's mostly what his stock in trade was, and so you see all these wonderful shots with these great shadows and these, which is a way of getting a great look very cheaply. And the story is packed with event.
Yep.
There's something happening every 2 or 3 minutes. So it feels very pulpy, very 1930s pulpy. And I just dug the hell out of it. It feels cheap. Yeah, it feels like it's moving towards the 50s and Ed Wood. Lon Chaney is miscast. But boy, it's fun.
I liked how insane Frank looked towards the end.
Yeah.
He looked horrible. He looks haunted and broken, and it's not a happy ending. Back when we did the reptile and the Gorgon, there's no happy ending. The guy doesn't get the girl, he kills her. You don't get that in a lot of these Universal films.
One thing, in Lon Chaney's defense, and I'm not going to defend a lot about it, but he it's not his fault, honestly, but he definitely has a sense of menace and danger that I think of in the gallery of Dracula's. Brings me to Jack Palance. The same again, I mean, a kind of a guy you're like as Dracula, and then you're like, he has a physical presence, but the scene where they shoot her through him,
that one,
a great idea. What a great scene.
He's
what a
just
terrifying.
pissed. But yeah,
Foster Brooks' hairdo was weird. It's Foster Brooks with but
I'm the only one that knows who that is.
well, sorry. But the rest of it, no, he was trying.
Yeah, he was miscast. Yeah, he didn't have an accent. Yeah, he couldn't carry that. He just looked like he was uncomfortable in that outfit. But there were scenes like you said where he has that glare, and I really the whole him floating over the water, that's freaking cool as heck.
Okay.
Like I said, I think Cat is probably the unsung female monster, because you didn't have many of those in the Universal films. And she had a screen presence. She was second billed. She was the villain of the piece, and between her and really it was Dracula's daughter, and then you had the Bride of Frankenstein. Yep. And if you want to get really deep into it, Val Lewton's Cat People, you had a female lead there, but that was it. And you didn't really see, other than like in those film noirs where you had the female, the femme fatale. Here you had a vampire.
You mentioned Lon Chaney Jr. reminded you of a little bit of Jack Palance, and I was seeing that a little bit with like Christopher Lee. Of course, Lon Chaney Jr. is no Bela Lugosi, but no one's gonna be, but he does he's dangerous, and he's got like that physical vibe, and like as you said, that scene where he's like floating in the coffin, where it's almost like a surfboard, and he does things that are like it's the special effects, but like the way he turns into smoke, and the way like his cape goes to the back, and then he's the bat in bat form, like that stuff is cool. He's like. So he may not be like the best Dracula ever, but he's a fun Dracula.
Just what you were saying, Bobby, like that's what I like about this movie is I love how the special effects have leveled up. I love the bat to Dracula transformations. I love the thing you talked about where he's floating. We get some just really cool. We get the steam that's in the mist that sneaks underneath the doors. There's a lot of things like that. And I'm going to be the Lon Chaney apologist here because, again, I grew up reading all the reference books about how he was too well fed to be Dracula. I think he does a really nice job as a physical presence. Mm-hmm. I think when he opens his mouth, he's not as convincing, but when he is threatening somebody, you can feel the power of Lon Chaney. You can see him like he is used to using his physicality, his size, to intimidate other people. And so when he is threatening other people, you can just feel that is a natural note for him to play. Mm-hmm. And that's the one thing I really do like about his Dracula is that he feels like he would just punch you through a wall.
And yet he's felled by a female, which is that romantic angle. But yeah, I always think that's interesting too, because it's flipped. It's typically Dracula's, I'm going to use you for food and whatever. Yep. And like, I'm going to
and be married. They get married.
Yeah.
It's a legal life.
Yeah. Dracula really falls for it.
Dracula was driving a car, by the way, too, I think, at one point in this movie.
I think he's being driven. I don't think he knows that, because I had the moment of like, that's right, she has to drive.
Maybe I think he was driving, but I thought he did a Michael Myers and was able to drive a car for some reason.
I think he's Batmaning around. I don't know.
But there was so much publicity, though, from Universal at this time. The new horror star.
That's right.
And with him adopting the Chaney name and all of that. I often wonder, was this movie written with him in mind, considering that just the next year they completely abandoned it and brought Carradine into the role.
Right.
And of course, I really couldn't see Carradine playing the son of Dracula, but all of that confusion. But he probably could have done this as Dracula. Yeah. But I wonder, was this movie specifically crafted for Lon Chaney to play the son, because they're like, he's not that old. So what if we,
That's
Well,
my
also
thought, is that you
technically-
got a horror star,
Yeah.
and we're going to use him and we're going to put him in The Mummy. We're going to put him in Frankenstein. He's already done The Wolfman, so we'll keep him for that, because Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman came out this same year, I think.
Yeah, 43 as well. And interesting too to say that if Lon Chaney looks too robust as Dracula, Lugosi as the Frankenstein monster looks so emaciated and
Right.
weak.
And if you want to get technical, kind of he was the son of Dracula because they wanted his dad to play Dracula. So this was probably their way of going,
There you go.
look, the son of Dracula.
We haven't mentioned John P. Fulton, who provides all of our kind of special optical effects. He is the one who's moving the mist around and doing those bat to Dracula transformations. And George Robinson is our cinematographer, and he was the cinematographer on the Spanish Dracula and on Dracula's Daughter and on this film. So when we talk about the camera moving around in these later films, that's George Robinson doing the work as opposed to Karl Freund. These are some MVPs from Universal that, we would see time and again.
This was the first film in which we saw the bat to vampire.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I love his little bounce.
I have feet now.
Yes. I think the one thing, and we mentioned it, but it needs to be further noted, is the performance of Robert Page in this film. It's on the same level I don't know. The question is he the lead or is she the lead? Who's the lead? But
Right.
He certainly makes a meal out of the circumstances as an actor that his character has been given.
Yeah.
And I think that, considering certainly they knew this was a B movie, they knew this was ridiculous, Dracula in Louisiana. I mean, he went in there swinging like some of the other people, like Otto Kruger, a fine theatrical actor. And we've talked, many times about the quality of the actors who participated in these films. And I look at this and go, it may be one of the great performances of this actor's career. He really went in there and went for broke. And some of it is really affecting the idea of what the character goes through. And you go, that's what makes the Universal films so wonderful, was the investment that the actors took in something that could also just be silly and foolish. They just had a language to buy into the circumstance and then just go with it. That's why I think they last, because you go, well, if they're invested, I'm invested. Show me more, and you get scenes like him at the end of this film, or Nan Gray coming out of that thing after that vampire has attacked her, and your imagination is going, what went on in that room?
Yeah.
That made her have that death shriek on her face,
Well, also, like I said, at the end of this movie, his face, his eyes, he's just checked out.
Yeah.
I just had to kill and set fire to the woman that I loved because it's the right thing to do. And now I'm hollow.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, for such an all-American looking actor as this guy, this is not one of the beauties of Hollywood. This is just a regular Joe Dope from, the Midwest. And again, it takes you back to going, it's World War II. Those guys were coming back with that look in their eye.
Yeah.
The things saw was recognizable to Americans, at that time. You could go there with some of this deep emotion that was, maybe not something you'd expect.
Just echoing what Michael was saying, a really strong and deep bench. Actors stepping up and really committing to parts that would be very easy to just phone in and be a little silly and ridiculous in, but they commit. It works.
Absolutely. One thing about these movies all together is every actor and actress, I feel, is bringing their A game. Of course, Bela Lugosi is giving his all as Dracula. Gloria Holden, even though she didn't really want to do it, she brings her A game to Dracula's Daughter. And the same with the whole cast of Son of Dracula. And I also wanted to bring up, there are 2 unofficial Dracula sequels I recommend. Mark of the Vampire, which was made at MGM. It starred Bela Lugosi, was directed by Tod Browning, And Michael Visceroff, the innkeeper in Dracula, makes a return appearance as the innkeeper. And that one's it's basically like a remake of London After Midnight, and it also co-stars Bela Lugosi's protege Carol Borland. And then the same year that Son of Dracula was filmed, it was released 1 year later, Bela Lugosi starred in Return of the Vampire.
Oh, yeah.
Where he played Armand.
What a werewolf!
Yeah, he has a werewolf servant. It was kind of like doing the Renfield character. And that one really is like an unofficial sequel to Dracula, because the first like 10 minutes or so take place during World War I, and it shows like a condensed version of the Dracula story where he gets staked at the end. But then World War II comes, and the Nazis are dropping bombs, and it dislodges, it messes up the cemetery, and then someone pulls out the stake. Yep. And now he's out for revenge. And that, again, it's like very World War II, because not only is the war like directly involved with the plot, but this time the Van Helsing character going up against them is a woman, Lady Jane Ainsley. So it has kind of like that Rosie the Riveter vibe too.
Plus, she's a psychologist, I think, as well. Like he's helping his werewolf servant become not that, and cures him. And it's really cool because it's sort of like smushing together the character from from Dracula's Daughter, and then Van Helsing, and then making it a girl, and it's like, oh, that's
it really. And like I want to say like 3 of the actors I think are from Dracula's Daughters too. Like
are in
the police inspector, the police inspector, one of the grave diggers is the policeman in Dracula's Daughter, and then the butler I think is in it too.
And one person we didn't mention from Son of Dracula is Evelyn Ankers, who is Lon Chaney's co-star from The Wolfman, and I think she's in a couple of the Inner Sanctums with him as well.
Yeah, he did not get along.
No, right. and she doesn't have a major part in this one. You know, she's not a major role here, but I think she's definitely there for marquee value.
Mm-hmm.
Well, cool. Let's circle back around for final thoughts on Dracula, celebrating its 95th anniversary. Thank you all so much for a great conversation. Bobby, go ahead and kick us off.
Oh, this is my favorite movie of all time. To me, Bela Lugosi, as I said in the beginning, he is Dracula. Everything that I think of with the character, all the famous Dracula dialogue, the famous Dracula costume, and just the way he says his lines. You know, I have chartered a ship. We will be leaving for England tomorrow evening. It's so cool. like he's this charismatic villain that you just love to watch. The whole franchise. They do so many interesting things with vampires in it.
Nice, Michael.
I was just so delighted to be reminded that the sequels are so much better than I remembered them being.
We had that same experience with The Mummy.
We did. But you know, the one thing we didn't talk about also with this was the lack of music score in the originals and the impact of that, and just the great music score in Dracula, in Son of Dracula. And I'm not sure whether it was a zither or some, you know, kind of instrument that was incorporated that I'm like, yeah, that's really modern. But, you know, overall, just that they're so worthwhile and that the sequels are much better and more fun than I remember them being.
Jessica?
It started it all for me. I was 4, and now you can see what happened because of Dracula. 100 years later, almost, we're still talking about this movie. It's still being effective to everything. It's still inspiring people. People keep going back to it, and I would consider the 1931 Dracula as iconic as the book and as far-reaching in what it's done and inspired. I mean, we've got the Count from Sesame Street. You've got Count Dracula, like Bobby said. It's there. It's in our blood, if you will. And I think that it's pretty amazing, like you said, that this is one of the best franchises when it comes to the stories, because the sequels are just as good. With Son of Dracula, he came to America and he is now in modern time. He succeeded in what he wanted to do. He got here. He's now part of the New World. But at the same time, that New World came back and kicked his ass.
Kate?
Well, fun fact for me, I'm so crazy. I got married on his birthday, October 20th. So we talk about him every year. Every year. I don't know if this is just like a neurodivergent thing, but when I'm watching movies, I'm like planning out the rest of my life like while I'm watching it. And I'm like, I usually try to figure out how many times I think I'll probably watch a movie before I'm gonna die. And I know for a fact that I will watch Dracula again. There are a few movies that I'm like, oh yeah, I've got a few more going. It's like
This
such
is
a like
taking a turn that I was not expecting.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. Well, it's just like
Literally
I
your
don't know,
final thoughts.
every single movie I do that with. I'm like, how many more times am I going to watch this? And then there are times where I'm like, I'm not going to fucking watch that again. You know? So there I am. How's that for a final thought?
That was amazing. Tom, follow that up.
I also will probably watch these movies again before I die, and I was not looking forward to seeing these sequels. I was thinking, oh, this is going to be a chore. God, I enjoyed them. They're really fun, and it's always a pleasure going back to Lugosi. My gosh, it's a performance at a level that we don't often see, and you see the same thing with Karloff as Frankenstein in the first one. There's something magical and special about that performance that makes it iconic and mythic and gets under your skin and gets in your blood, and you want to return to again and again. Kind of amazing, that Bram Stoker wrote this essentially a pulp novel at the end of the 1800s. Somebody was saying there's Dracula is probably the second most famous figure in literature after Jesus.
And Bela Lugosi played both.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, what are we talking about? I feel like we talk about him having like a shitty career, and I'm like, you got cast as Jesus and Dracula. What else is there?
You just didn't get paid for it. That's all.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
They're both people who come back from the dead.
right.
And feed you blood as as a sacrament. Yeah.
As we're talking about Bela Lugosi coming back from the dead, I think we have to include this. When Bela Lugosi died, he was buried in full Dracula costume.
Yeah.
And at the funeral, the funeral procession, the driver, he was supposed to turn left, but he said the steering wheel of the hearse locked into place, and he had to keep going down Hollywood Boulevard. And he didn't regain control of the car until after they passed Bela's favorite cigar store.
Nice.
Yeah.
Classic.
I like it. You mentioned, famous literary. I think Dracula is the most popular character in film. I think the character of Dracula has shown up in more movies than any other, perhaps other than Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
And when we think about Dracula, we think about Bela Lugosi. And I think that's pretty incredible considering there are hundreds and hundreds of other Draculas out there. But when we think of Dracula, we think of this Dracula. And thank you all so much for such a great conversation. Here's to 95 more years of Dracula. And looking forward to having you all on again very soon. And until next time, keep searching, keep exploring, and keep sharing the scare.